Hello, everybody. Welcome to another show. We don't have a name yet for the show. We just, I guess, get together and talk to fun dog people. So if anybody has any ideas for a name, go ahead and drop them in the comments. But we've got someone that I've been really excited to talk to today. I'm gonna pass it over to Rob to intro himself, but I've got to say, of all the dog people in Canada, Rob is one that I think a lot of people will know the name, but a lot of people might not know you, Rob, personally, and might not have had a chance to actually hear from you and hear your philosophies on dogs and dog training. So I'm here with Rob Smith of Bespoke Canine and looking forward to getting into it. Rob, why don't you just sort of walk us through quickly who you are, a little bit about your background, and why you're sitting here with me today.
Well, Jamie and I actually met through a phone call and a text message looking for a stud dog for his female. So some people might know me and relate to me through my dog. Actually, he's more known than I am in the dog world. Is Ace, who comes from um, Deep Hollows Kennels. Brittany Cool actually bred her stud to a female of my mentors. So and a very small kennel, not very well known either. It was known uh, more so 20 plus years ago than it is today. It's pretty well retired and shut down. So, I mean, I started into dogs just training as a hobby and wanting to learn, and had shepherds my whole life. Started with my mom wanting a German Shepherd when I was a kid, and being in and around them, and always just loved the breed and what they bring to the table. They're a very exciting animal in my opinion. There's no better dog than a very well balanced German Shepherd, and I'm fortunate enough to have one of those. So,
So what are
um,
you doing these days, Rob? What's your main business?
so I do a lot of well, the main business is in-home dog training services. My strengths are in reactive and aggressive dogs. We also do everything from puppy foundations to on leash and off leash obedience. A lot of problem solving. With COVID still in the air, we'll call it. There was a lot of dogs that were unsocialized, and a lot of people cooped up in their homes, and some inexperienced folks getting probably the breeds that they shouldn't have gotten in their homes for their families. Just to be completely honest, and they're struggling. They see the movies with the Malinois, and they see the movies with the German Shepherds and even Golden Retrievers and all these other Cane Corso's and what have you, and they run into socialization problems and understanding how a dog communicates differently than what a human does, and that's where it really stems from.
So let's go back to something you said a second ago about German Shepherds specifically. We'll get into the Malinois side of things a little bit later, maybe as well. But
Sure.
let's stay focused. We're both German Shepherd guys, and I think we've had
Yep.
some pretty interesting conversations about our philosophies on German Shepherds, and they kind of align, and they might not necessarily align with a lot of other people in the German Shepherd world. I would
True.
argue that that's probably to the detriment of the breed itself.
Agreed.
I mean, I think that you and I are right, but
I,
let that being
right.
said, let's get into what we actually think. I'll let you do most of the talking because again, I think you're mostly going to echo my thoughts on it. But when you talk about people getting German Shepherd in their home and how it's maybe not the right dog for their family. Now, if you went on the internet and you went onto your average German Shepherd breed board, uh, I would be told with great authority that German Shepherds should be basically a golden retriever with pointy ears. They should be in your house. They should be, good with everybody, basically a big lapdog.
Yeah.
What in
Yeah.
your view is wrong with that as a view of German Shepherds as a breed?
I mean, I think some of the traditional qualities that were there years ago from a German Shepherd have now been lost, or very difficult to find. I know we've talked in depth about breeding and what have you, and the actual traits of a German Shepherd, they're supposed to be aloof to people. They're supposed to be territorial. They're supposed to have those and you know, be the leader of the pack when the leader isn't there. That's what they should be. They should be balanced. They should be able to recognize a threat when warranted. They should be able to recognize what's not a threat when it's not there. I'm fortunate enough to have a wonderful dog, and it's not, I don't say that just because he's my dog. He's environmentally and socially stable. He wants to please his handler and he has willingness to engage. Those are the four qualities of a really good working dog, in my opinion. And let's just keep it 101. I think there's too much macro and too much like really fine looking at a German Shepherd or any working dog. Uh, those four qualities are key to a good working dog. And a lot of that has been lost where you know everybody wants their dog to be social with everybody. Well, I don't want my German Shepherd to be social with everybody. They want them to be, like you said, a German Shepherd in a Golden Retriever's coat. They should be aloof. Um, I see more and more and more German Shepherds that don't hold that quality of being aloof and just wanting their handler and saying, yeah, those other people or that dog isn't as important as my handler. And a lot of German Shepherds aren't saying that anymore. They're saying that they just want to go to everybody and want their belly rubbed. Well, I don't want everybody rubbing the belly of my dog. That's
You even went so far. I'm maybe jumping a little ahead in the conversation here, but we'll come back to Ace because I want to talk about him specifically later, Ace
sure.
being your dog. You mentioned at one point when we were talking about it was in the context of police dogs, and we were talking about how sharp a lot of the Malinois are nowadays and how they're
Right.
coming up the leash at the handlers occasionally. And you actually said something that I think would surprise a lot of people who maybe aren't in this world. You said that you actually don't mind a dog that's willing to come up the leash at you. And I
No,
think
no.
I think a lot of people would find that, if you're not used to dealing with that kind of dog, right? They would say, "Well, what the hell? Why would you want a dog that's willing to come up the leash at the handler? That seems wrong. That seems like an imbalance. And if you say you want a balanced dog, how do you have a balanced dog that's also willing to come up the leash at the handler?" Can you
Right.
kind of walk us through a little bit about that?
Well, typically it's built out of frustration, right? When a dog comes up the leash or what have you. But I've also found that it's because the handler is being unfair. And if the handler is being unfair, then in all honesty, if I'm being unfair to a dog and he comes up the leash on me because maybe it's something I haven't taught him, maybe it's something I'm not clear about, maybe he doesn't understand or she, maybe the dog doesn't understand why they're being corrected or why that pressure is there for them. And if they haven't been taught that and they redirect on the handler, well, that's a learning for the handler. It's not a learning for the dog. So, I mean, being tagged, we'll call it, being tagged by a shepherd or a Malinois when it's on leash and you're being unfair, the dog is justified in doing so. And if he's willing to stand up for himself, I like that dog. I want that dog to stand up for himself. I like that quality. Now, it can get excessive. Don't get me wrong, and something that you have to work out of the animal. But I mean, usually it's just in teaching. What is it that you haven't taught the dog before before you get to that point? Is the dog clear on what the expectation is in that particular environment, in that particular scenario? Have you gone through that? And a lot of people just think they can correct the dog and it's gonna obey or not redirect. Oh, it's my dog, it's not gonna bite me. Yeah, get a Dutchie or a Malinois or a Shepherd that's in that high drive mode and you're being unfair. And you'll be very surprised that you're I'd be very surprised if your dog doesn't tag you.
Give an example of something that you would deem to be being unfair. I find it really interesting, and I completely agree with what you're saying, but I find it fascinating that, fairness, we'll often say that dogs aren't smart, right? There are smart dogs, but as compared to humans, they're dogs. Like they have their own form of intelligence, but they think and they understand completely differently than we do. What I find really interesting about the concept of fairness is what a base instinct fairness is among so many different animals where I have young kids, and the concept of fairness. I've got twins, a boy and a girl. From the time that those kids were able to move, you could tell that they had a concept of fairness, if something was fair, if something wasn't fair.
Sure.
Dogs have that innate sense of something that's fair and something that's not fair as well. So give me an example in your training of what it would mean to be unfair to your dog.
So let's take a scenario as a for instance. You're teaching the dog some bite work, you're doing some nice sends, and the dog's working very, very well and what have you. And then you're starting to blend secondary obedience into it, where you're expecting the dog to maintain obedience in and around a decoy when the dog sees that decoy and he's in that drive. He's definitely in that drive, and he's always won and gotten that reward over and over and over again. And now you're subduing that. So you're holding the dog back from his largest prize, right? By going in for the bite. Well, if you don't slowly show him, or you just throw a prong collar or an e-collar on him straight away and start to expect that, or let's say you don't just walk into the room and automatically start doing obedience in that scenario, then you're kind of going down a one-way street the wrong way. If let's here's a scenario, let's do it this way. You give the dog 2 or 3 bites, and then now you're going to start your secondary obedience for the first time. That's a bad idea. The dog's already in this drive, and now you're asking him to be called away from the decoy that he's just won. So now you're on your third bite in that session, and you start to ask for a plot. So you start to ask for a foos, and you're wondering why your dog is charging after the decoy, and you begin to correct him on a prong collar or an e-collar for not listening to his obedience, which your dog does very clearly, no problems whatsoever without that decoy around. Right now, you have that
Right.
expectation with this super duper prize at the end of the leash. Well, you can't expect that. And now the dog gets frustrated, and bang, you're wondering why your dog is hanging off your own arm or smashing you in the leg, going, why can't I have this? You haven't taught me this before. What are you
Right.
doing? You're telling me that every single time that there's a decoy there that I get a bite, right? And that is being unfair. It's a little bit unrealistic, in my opinion.
Do you think there's a relationship component to it in terms of, I often find that one of the things that I try to teach dogs early on is that I'm going to do what I can as a handler to get you the thing that you want. And I'm going to make you understand that you're going to be able to have the opportunity to get the thing that you want, but ultimately it's going to be on my terms. So I'm going to make sure that you have the chance to get that bite, but first we're going to get done the stuff that I want to get done. We're going to get that
Right,
obedience done. And
right,
then, yes, you're going to get the bite, but you're not going to get it on your terms when you want it. You're going to get it on my terms when I want it. And then I find that over time, if you start to build that up in the dog, speaking of clarity, starts to get the idea that, okay, I have some trust in this handler that ultimately I will get the thing that I want.
right.
I don't know that that would justify going in and starting to train secondary obedience for the very, very first time after 3 bites, though. That to me is just,
Yeah, you
you
know
might
what
want
I'm
to have a
saying, right?
discussion about the handling. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just unrealistic at the end of the day to have that expectation of your dog performing obedience when they're in that different drive, and a lot of people don't understand that. So
So we've been talking a bunch about the training side of things. I want to take a step back to your dog, Ace, a little bit
sure,
and talk a little bit about what we've decided to do between your kennel, or I guess you don't really have a kennel per se,
no,
but between your business and you and your dog and us, and in pairing Ace with Nina. I want to talk a little bit because you mentioned the plots, you mentioned the foos. These are terms that we will often hear used in sport work. You
hmm
yourself are not a sport guy.
no,
You're not big on the need for titles on dogs.
no,
And so again, we talk about things that are normal or accepted, normally accepted in the working dog world, in the German Shepherd world specifically. I would say that someone believing that titles are not necessary falls outside the norm. And now I happen to agree with it again, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on titles themselves. What's good about them? What do they show you? Because they do show something. What do they
hmm
show you? And why do you consider them to be more of a nice to have than a need to have?
Well, right off the bat, the only person that knows whether that's good training or genetics in that animal in the sport world is the decoy, specifically in bite work. They can tell if there's a genetic factor there, or if there's or if it's just good training. And I'm not knocking good training, and I'm not knocking the genetics factor either. And I don't want anybody thinking that I'm knocking The sport. I'm the very first person to congratulate people when they have a title on their dog. It's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of dedication. It's a lot of work. And if they're having fun doing it and their dog is enjoying it and you're having fun out on the sport field and with the clubs and all of those things, by all means, please go and enjoy your dog and get them to the highest capability that you can. You know, we all know Has from Shield. Congratulations, Has. Like
He's competing this
that's
weekend in the Nationals in Vancouver. He's
absolutely,
done
like, that is
tremendous things with his
fantastic.
dogs.
Carson Collins from Spartan Canine. He worked his butt off with his dog in order to be able to get the titles that he has. I know Carson. Congratulations, Carson. I spoke to him when he got his first title. These guys and Ryan with one of my pups from Noble Canine, one of Ace's pups, Blitz. He got his PDC in PSA as well. So it's I don't think titles really show all of the capability of the dog. They do show some things that they're capable of doing things. The sports have changed so much. I still call it Schützen. I don't call it IPG. I did Schützen years and years and years ago, and I gained titles myself years and years and years ago. And the sport has changed a lot. There's no stick hits. The gunshots are gone. There's a whole bunch of things that have changed, and I get that people want to get more people involved in the sport and the younger generations coming up so that they don't think that their dog is being hurt and all of these things. I can completely understand that and I empathize with that. It used to be a test of the breed, and it used to be a test of genetics and not just training. And again, these guys that are doing it, congratulations to all of them. It's fantastic that they're enjoying that sport with their dog. It shows good precision out of the dogs. It does show some balance out of the dogs. Then it does show that they can take some pressure and that they're willing to please their handler. Um, you know, that's really to me what it shows. Tracking,
And
on the other hand, when it comes to real tracking in comparison, what I call real tracking in comparison to sport tracking, sport tracking is a very good foundation to be able to get a dog to start to track and start to search. And we all basically use those same fundamentals when it comes to training, the footprint tracking and what have you. But it could take 3 days for a sport dog to find a person on the end of a canine leash. So that's my opinion. You can create speed, and there are dogs that can do both. I'm not discounting that. That there are civil dogs out there that can work both on the sport field and as well as take the guy out in your neighbor's garage. I believe Carson has one of those dogs. I believe has one of those dogs as
I
well.
think they both do.
I
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not, and Blitz as well. I'm telling you.
Hmm.
But I'm not discounting that they can't do both jobs. But that's few and far between.
I think that that's the really important thing to highlight. I think you've highlighted it there. When you're saying, or when we're saying that titles are not the be all end all, we're talking in terms of a decision as to whether or not a dog should be bred. Because at the end of the day, when you're breeding
Right.
a dog, the title doesn't get passed down to the offspring. The
That's
genetics
right.
get
Yeah,
passed down to the offspring.
you don't have puppies with a tattooed IGP3 title
No,
on their back. There's some things that I find to be more important than the title itself. Health is number one. Number
absolutely.
one. 100%. Hips, elbows, overall general health. A really good, true to the breed German Shepherd should have a belly like a billy goat. They should be able to eat a tin can and never have a problem. Um,
Right.
Things like that get overlooked when it comes to titles. That dog could have a title. It could have major skin issues. It could have soft teeth. It could have, you know, ear issues. It could have. We don't know, right? So really, is that dog breedable or not? Just because it has a title, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily mean it's breedable.
No, I think it means that the handler slash trainer, I'll use the term handler because in most cases the handler and the trainer are one and the same.
Mhm.
But I think it shows a tremendous degree of proficiency on the handler's part,
For
certainly.
sure.
the title is a piece of information. It says a lot about the skill of the handler to be able to put that title on the dog.
For sure.
But a dog, just because a dog does not have that particular title, doesn't mean that it doesn't also have the genetics that could allow it to have that title or what have you. And
Correct.
frankly, it's not all that difficult once you know what you're looking at to look at a dog and to say that dog could earn a 3 in the right hands.
Of
It
course. Of
you can
course.
look at
Like,
a dog, you can see it work, you can see what it's doing, and you can tell. I actually don't think it's fair to look at a dog and say that dog could never earn a 3. I think you could say it'd be hard for it to earn a 3, but at the same time, I think that that would then depend on the skill of the handler. Like if you took a guy like Haas and you put a very mediocre dog in front of him, I bet he could still put a 3 on that dog because he's an exceptional handler.
oh, like he is an exceptional handler. There's lots of really good handlers and a lot of really
Yeah,
good
we're
trainers
using
out
him
there
as an
that could do
example
that.
just because we both know
Yeah,
him, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. And that could, you're absolutely right. That could be accomplished. Um, I think sometimes in the sport, especially folks that are just getting into the sport or interested in the sport, they choose the incorrect dog for the sport. They look at wanting that high drive, crazy animal. Well, that dog doesn't particularly belong in sport. In my opinion, when it comes to a sport dog, you're looking for a more balanced dog. Yeah, a lot of the bite work is always the highlight of the show, whether it's PSA, whether it's ring sport, whether it's IPG shits, and I always call it. So if I call it shits, and excuse me, but it's always the highlight of the show, right? Everybody
Sure.
tends to forget that it's 85% obedience and control. 85. It's
Oh
only
yeah.
15% bite work.
I would say it's even more than that because really the bite
Yeah,
work in IGP is obedience with biting.
right. And the
So
same with
it's
PS, it's the same with PSA. And it's even KMPV. There's all of the control components to those dogs. So, it's those high fire dogs that are, I've seen a couple at some trials and I'm like, wow, that would make a really nice street dog, or that would make a really nice canine dog. I really think that it's in the wrong spot. And now you're suppressing natural drives and natural genetics in order to be able to obtain a title. Um, you know,
so let's talk genetics. You just hit on it. Let's get into Ace himself a little bit and
sure.
then talk about the pairing. You don't, we should stipulate for everybody, you as a practice don't stud Ace out. Maybe you can talk
This
a little
is
bit about why that is, and then also what made you decide that this pairing was worth doing? What excites you about this particular pairing? And I mean, we've established Ace isn't titled. We don't care. Ace is a
nope.
phenomenal dog. The videos and seeing him work and seeing him do what he does, plus his pedigree, is really all you need to know about this dog. He is spectacular, and this pairing is going to be fire. But let's just hear what you have to say about it. Why did you decide that this would be a good way to go?
So Ace has never been studded out beyond any litter out of my control. Ace has had one previous litter that was from a female that I imported and raised her up. I wasn't overly thrilled with the litter, so it was just a genetic thing. It was I believe it was 3-4 Terravonder Statch Match was the actual line breeding on the puppies. Backing in on that particular breeding, so Blitz, who we talk about from Noble, is a great grandson also of Blackjack Mounted Halfenschleif. So it brings a little bit of fire in there.
Mhm.
And Blitz is a really nice dog. All the puppies came out fantastic. Just I wanted something a little bit more, let's say. Um, some nice dogs. Um, this particular pairing comes from some older blood. Um,
Mhm.
those older genetics, I really like. When I researched Nina, she's got some blackjack in there. She's a blackjack granddaughter.
Mhm.
It brings a little bit of fire, and it brings it different up on her father's side than it did on the female that I had previously that brought it up on her mother's side. So a little bit of differences there, maybe genetic wise. Ace is a Terravonder Statch Match grandson on his mother's side. and he is what's he have up top? He comes from my mentor's kennel. His grandfather was actually my mentor's personal dog, and his father was Brittany Cool's personal dog as well, Gunner. She owns Rook and has earned some titles in PSA. Ace was the only male of the litter, and I had first pick male.
Sweet deal.
So sweet deal. So couldn't go wrong. He's a big boy. He's if anybody knows or anybody wants to research what Ace looks like, you could actually look up Yoshi von der Doll and Wise. Ace is the spitting image of that dog and works like him, and he's line bred 5'5" on Yoshi. He brings some
He's
that let's just say Yoshi even in his day was saucy. He had some spice. He would rebite after the out. Things like that. That little bit
yeah.
of flair that you like. And being in the older style of Chitzen, there was some real pressure put on the dogs when it came to stick hits and things like this. And a tiny little woman was his handler, believe it or not. I think she weighed about as much as Yoshi did. And yeah. So Ace is a big boy. He weighs in the last time I had him to the vet, he weighed in at 53 and a half kilograms, which comes out to be about 117 to 118 pounds. And if I skip 3 meals, you're going to see his ribs. So I keep him lean because he is a bigger dog.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Big, powerful grips, big head. Um, his willingness to engage. He's a thinking dog when he comes in for the bite. He's not overly explosive where he's going to smash the handler over on the bite. He's actually more concerned about making contact and making that bite. So he slows down a little bit on the bite. Um, but he always targets well. He's never lost a fight. I've taken him lots of places, lots of different scenarios. He was at Grassroots for their first Fright Night Bite Night and stole the show.
Talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So for
Yeah,
anybody who
stole the
doesn't
show.
know, Grassroots Canine is a local canine trainer. Mike Nesbitt runs Grassroots. Mike is very well known in the working dog
Mm-hmm.
world. He's certainly very big on social media. Canine Mike, go check him out if you're not already. And so every year, Grassroots Canine puts on this annual Fright and Bite or Bite and Fright
Yeah,
Night, something
Fright
like
Night,
that. It's
Bite
around
Night, right
Hall,
around.
yeah,
Yeah,
around
yeah. So
Halloween, and they put it together. It's at night. There's a bunch of different stations. There's a bunch of, it's a competition, but it's
right.
having done it before, it's not anything that you've ever trained for. Put it that way. Like you
No,
basically can't train for the stuff that they're doing at this competition, and it's really just a matter to see how the dogs do when they're thrown into these, kind of crazy situations.
right,
And so
right,
talk a little bit. I know Ace came out, he was a bit of an underdog going into that competition until
right.
his first bite. And after that, everyone was kind of like, oh shit, okay, well, there's a new dog on the scene now. I guess we're gonna have to find out who this Ace character is. So tell us a
Well,
little bit about what happened there.
I don't think it was much of a surprise to Haz and Mike because they'd seen him before. And
Fair enough.
when I started Ace's Foundation, it did start with Haz at Shield Canine. I did a bunch of work up there with Haz, and thank you, Haz, for assisting me with building a fantastic dog. In between those sessions, a lot of people don't know, but I did a lot of work with my mentor as well, building foundation with my dog. Carson also did some decoy work with Ace during his foundation. So again, thank you to those guys and their experience and being able to assist Ace with his growth and where he is today. When I went to Grassroots, it was actually Carson and I went up together, and he called me up and he says, "Hey, what about this Fright Night Bite Night thing?" And I'm like, shit, I don't know if I want to do that. Like I just again, not so much into the competition stuff, right? And he's like, "Oh, come on up. He's gonna have a good time, what have you. Just put him in the highest level and go for it." Right. I'm like, shit, what the hell? So let's go and do this. So Ace had never taken a bite at night, number one. Ace had never taken a bite in the back of a vehicle. So they had a half-ton truck that had some hay there. And he had to go into the box of the pickup and bite Brent, actually. So somebody we both know. Um, and then he had to bite another decoy that was running at him in the dark. I think that was the first bite. Then he had to bite a decoy that was in the driver's seat with the door open, and all while this is going on, I want everybody to understand there's a four-wheeler that's driving around shining lights as we go around this. So you have an automatic distraction
Hmm.
to the element of your bite work. And Ace had never been around a four-wheeler before. Ace had never been on this field before. Ace had never taken bites in these scenarios before. Um, and not only just the bite work, like they do some surprise scenarios. So you put your dog into a foos and you're walking, and all of a sudden this ghost pops up off the ground, and boom, it's right there, right? Um, I was at a little bit of a disadvantage because in this level 3 that they had with all these other things, I got to watch the level 1 and the level 2, and then they had this level 3, which was a little bit more extreme, and I was the first one on the field. I didn't know
Oh, so
what was
you hadn't
coming.
seen it at all.
I
You
had
didn't even know it was
no
coming.
idea. Had no idea. So I had nothing to really prepare for when it came to having Ace out there. Now, one part of a little bit of a funny was the one part of it after you go over this little boardwalk and you come down. They wanted me to pick Ace up and carry him across the field. I'm like, you're out of your mind. He's like 115 pounds. I'm not picking him up. So I actually lost points on that because I wasn't picking him up. It was I probably could have, but I'm like, no way, I'm not picking him up. This is crazy. So anyway, get it in around, and he was successful on every bite. There was no outs on this particular okay because
I
Ace isn't a
mean,
great
that's a good
outer.
problem. That's a good problem to have as far as I'm
Right.
concerned.
So a lot of people, Carson noticed it from the stands there and from watching it. He goes, in the back of the truck when you had when you were when he was on Brent, he says, I saw you choke him out on the prong collar. And I said, yeah, I did because the next bite was going to be inside the truck. I knew it was coming, and he had never done that before. So I was actually using pain to load him for the next bite.
Aha.
So I
Nice.
choked him up out of frustration, and then boom, let him go. And then the last bite scenario was two decoys. So it was Mike and Haz. And if anybody thinks that Haz didn't uh, put some pressure on him, then he had this little plastic. Uh, I think it was like an axe or something, some Halloween prop, and he actually broke it over Ace's back, and they were crashing him pretty hard and everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the more intense that the work was, the harder it was for Ace to out. And
Sure.
he actually, I was surprised. Brent did very well with Rex. I always liked watching Rex work and what have you. He was a very intense mal. But
Rex being the
sorry, Brent.
grandsire of our most recent herder
Right,
litter, that I
right.
should say. But Ace took him
Sorry,
in that competition.
sorry, Brent, if you're still a little sore about it, but we got first place over here.
I'm gonna
But no,
clip
it
that.
was
I'm
a
gonna
lot of
clip
fun.
this one little piece of the podcast and I'm gonna text it to Brent.
Uh, Brent's a great guy. I always, I've only been around Brent a handful of times, and we always have good convo, and I respect Brent very, very much. And
He's been
he,
on here with me a couple times.
yeah, he's a
We've had a
great,
couple
great
really good
guy.
chats.
Lot of good experience. Rex was, I thought like, there's no way that Ace is even gonna, be in the top three or what have you, and he stole the show. So it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and I like having fun with my dogs. I don't like going out and displaying them too much. Now he only works a couple of few times a year. It's not about how much work he does; it's about how correct the work is. So,
Sure.
he's almost 7 and he's getting to retirement age and what have you. But I still like to go out and have fun with him every once in a while and show some guys what it's like to get bruised up. So.
So what do you think based on you've got a wealth of knowledge of pedigrees and the German Shepherd side, and you see the pedigree that Ace has, and then you see Nina with the Pike sire, and then
Mhm.
the grandsire Blackjack got some definite fire in there. What do you we're just making predictions here because at the end of the
Yeah,
day, this pairing's never happened before. So we could get the worst of both dogs. Who knows, right?
you
But
could. You could.
chances are it'll be something good. So if we have to guess, and we're gonna guess positively, what do you foresee out of this particular pairing?
Well, when meeting Nina, she's a social dog. She's easy to handle. She doesn't have She doesn't hold a lot of social aggression and what have you, which is nice. I really like to be able to build that and what have you. Um, she's not a spooky dog. She's environmentally stable, like Ace is. I like that. Those again in my top two, right? Environmentally
Sure.
stable and socially stable. Um, she's a stocky dog. She's going to assist with that size with Ace. Um, you know, I'm expecting you're going to get a couple of 100 pounders out of this easy. Um, some nice big, bold, big-headed dogs. She's beautiful. She's got a nice flat, straight back, and she's stocky and low to the ground. Um, she's a lot bigger than what she actually looks. Nina does.
Yeah,
Like
she is. She's
because she,
thick.
yeah, she's like a little football player. It's like she's low to the ground and stocky and can hold her ground. Um, I just like pedigree wise, you don't see these anymore, right? Like
Hmm.
you don't see a pike daughter that's available, or even a pike son. Those dogs are gone,
Yeah.
and with what's available, I thought it was a good option to be able to see some of that older blood come out. Now, when with the pairing, you don't see any line breeding and what have you, and that's perfectly fine. You're just looking for traits, and what I've been taught. A lot of people look at the first couple of generations and what those dogs are, or if line breeding is line breeding, then you're looking for those 2 3s and 3 2s and 3 3s and what have you, and getting it into that close third generation. I'm of the belief that you can see up to 7, sometimes 8 generations back, you know, just like you or I. Uh, we may not hold traits of our father, but an abundance of our father, but we might see something way back from a great grandfather or a great great grandfather. And, that's what makes us unique. And I mean, I know of a dog right now that carries a white paw genetic, and I know exactly where it comes from. And it's from 6 or 7 generations back from a dog by the name of Mink Balmahoff Whitfield. And, you can see these traits come out. Now, are you going to get an abundance of those traits from dogs way back? Sometimes you might. It might surprise you. And sometimes you may not, right? So it's
It's fascinating.
I like how you worded it in our phone call. It's the casino of breeding. It's
Yeah,
always a
the canine
gamble.
casino.
That's right. It's a gamble on what you're going to get. Can we foresee what the future holds with these puppies? Absolutely not. You can't really do that. But there's
Yeah.
some things that give us a leg up, and that leg up is that social and environmental stability. Both of the dogs' overall health is fantastic, and Ace has got the willingness to engage. I haven't didn't have the opportunity to see Nino work, but with what she's got genetically, we all know that it's there.
She has no issues there at all. She's an older girl now, so it's
Yep,
it's
yep,
starting to fade off. This will be her last litter one way or another. This is her swan song. We were tremendously fortunate to be able to bring her in from Holland when Koos Hassing of Tiekerhook passed away. And so that's been an absolute honor for us. As you know, we've had trouble the last two attempts getting her pregnant. So we're hoping that those two attempts were neither one of them was ideal at all.
yep.
This situation, this pairing was absolutely ideal. We had three full pairing. Now it was done side by side AI, but nevertheless, it should be just as good. So anyway, very, very hopeful there. But I I'm just reflecting on what you're saying about these traits coming in from 7, 8 generations later.
Well, I can
And
give you an example. I can give you a prime example. I just had a litter 2 years ago, and each of the dogs 3 generations back, there's 3 dogs in that pedigree that are pure black. I didn't have any pure black puppies,
right.
right?
It
So,
speaks to to as much as we try to control, and we want to, right? We do our best to control as many variables as we can,
mhm.
but it just speaks to the randomness that
Oh,
is breeding at the end of the day. And
it's
you
crazy.
said it as much as you liked what I said. We're getting a mutual admiration society here, but I loved what you said, where you're like breeding, ultimately, it's luck. and
100%.
you're just hoping, you're doing the best you can. And the way I like to think about it, I've said it before on here, but the way I like to think about it is that you're basically you're rolling dice every time, and it's a matter of, am I going to be rolling four 30-sided Dungeons and Dragons dice where my outcomes could be one of a billion different combinations and permutations? Or am I going to roll one six-sided, or let's say two six-sided die, and have a smaller range of outcomes? That still doesn't mean that I'm not going to roll snake eyes every now and again,
Right,
because I am. And
right.
so it's funny because as interesting as it is that those traits can come in that many generations later, it really does. As someone who breeds, it's almost scary because it's like, I'm trying here. I'm doing my best to put together these great dogs, and all I can do is hope at the end of the
Yep.
day that what comes out down the line. So it's about the process, not the result, because you can't
Yeah,
control the result. The only thing you can
no,
really control is the process.
that's right. And I mean, I think with this particular pairing that we tried to give a leg up as much as we could with the dogs that were paired with both of their attributes together. Um, I can tell you that, you know, Gunner, what fantastic dog, Ace's dad, great dog, socially environmentally stable, willingness to engage, great dog, had a title as well. Believe just a BH, never got a one or a two or
Oh,
a three,
don't
but
call
just a
that a
B.
title. The IGP not
I
the
know, I know,
IGP
I
mafia
know,
is going to be all over you.
I know. Whatever, it is what it is. Again, I don't know how the sport world views these things, so excuse the ignorance. But no, he was a fantastic dog. Um, his Ace's mother was, like you mentioned, a German Shepherd in a Golden Retriever's coat.
Right.
Um, she's easygoing, family dog. Anybody can touch her. Anybody can pet her. She's a little bit aloof, um, but it's just what she throws as a brood bitch that makes her
Yep.
special. You know, it's the blood inside her that makes her special. And you know, sometimes you see this crazy dog and this crazy dog, and I mean crazy as in really high drive, really, you know, a lot of defensive drive, a lot of prey aggression, and you know, destructive prey drive, and all of these blended drives. You see them pair those together, and they think they're going to get this fabulous dog, and they don't.
Yeah.
And then you see, you know, a well balanced dog that has willingness to engage, and they put this dog back to a German Shepherd and that's like a golden retriever, and you end up with these fantastic animals. And you know, I think balance is so important with a dog. And the further you get away from that center line of balance, the more issues that you have. You
Mhm.
know, like I like a dog that can take a correction. Ace can take a correction. Um, one of the puppies that I was going to hold back, you know, she just wasn't my style of dog. Couldn't handle that correction the way I do personally. You know, for somebody else, fantastic dog. For me, not so much. And you know, I like those dogs that can take a correction and just move on. And you know, I see that in Nina. That's what I see. I
Mhm.
see that strength and that little bit of boldness that she has there to be able to
Nina's
pair that with
daughter,
Ace is,
Indy, yeah, Nina's daughter, Indy, is very, very much like that. That's part of
yeah.
what gives me some excitement is that I actually own one of Nina's daughters as well, and have
Hmm.
bred her. And yeah, I mean, Nina certainly, I don't really train her that much anymore. Like I said, she's an older girl, so there's not really opportunities for me to correct her per se. But
Right,
I
right.
do have, I did put a BH on Indy, her daughter, and
Hmm.
it was the same thing. Like she'll eat the pressure. She loves it, and she just comes back for more. And I'm not a
That's right.
very heavy-handed trainer to begin with, so when I deliver a correction, there's meaning behind it, and there's a reason for it. And
That's right. I mean, I'm not suggesting that I'm heavy-handed. What I'm suggesting is
no, I didn't
as you
take
just
that.
said, that the as you just said, you know, it's a correction with meaning. You know,
Yeah,
that's what it's for.
and
Yep.
knowing that Ace can do that, seeing what we get out of Indy, who is one of Nina's daughters, I think, overall, I think it bodes very well. So all that being said, I'm super excited. I hope she's taken. I have stopped having any real hopes though in this world. So at this point, having hopes when you're breeding dogs is just a recipe for disappointment.
Yep.
So I'm hoping that she is pregnant. I have no expectations, and if she's not, my life will go on. I'll be sad
Well,
because I
if
want
not,
those genetics. They're fantastic.
then we'll arrange a breeding with one of your other females. I'll stand by that and stand by the breeding and what have you. Obviously,
Absolutely. We'll make something work.
we'll make something happen and make something work in the future. And
So let me quickly move on to one last thing that I wanted to discuss. I think we've done a really good job laying out this litter and what we're excited about, but I want to bring things a little bit more full circle where we started talking about training, and you've mentioned your mentor a bunch of times
mhm,
throughout this conversation. I've mentioned Koos. I don't know if I mentioned he was my mentor on the German Shepherd breeding side. I think
mhm.
mentorship is of anything that you could want in this world. I think mentorship is the number one thing that you need. Now, I came into the working dog and the dog training world very differently than the average person, and so I have young people messaging me online saying, "How do I get into it?" And I basically tell them like my path is not the path. Like not many people get into it from being a banker on Bay Street and then take the back door in by buying their knowledge from private sessions and what have you, right? But that being said, the bulk of my knowledge came from mentorship from people who had been in it for a long time and that I was able to download when I still do download what's in their head into mine. And that's what I tell when young people contact me about how to get into this. I say, don't try to take my path because that just won't work for you. But if you can do one thing, it's find somebody who's willing to mentor you, who's willing to actually share the experience and the information that they have in their head. Better yet, find more than one. But I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about the importance of mentorship. Talk about your mentor. Maybe, give him a shout out because I think that without strong mentorship in this world, the working dog world is going to die. And I think it's incumbent upon those of us with a little bit of gray to be willing to share that information with the people who are coming up.
Yeah, I mean, when I started working, I'll give him a little shout out. I'm not going to say his full name because he'll give me a smack in the back of the head for that. He's a
Fair
very
enough.
humble person, but JPG, you know who you are. Um, he's got probably close to 50 years into it now. Um, and he had quite an extensive kennel a long time ago, and all canines, protection dogs, and what have you. And way back then, it was if it wasn't going to be a good canine dog, it was going to be a sport dog, and now it's kind of the other way around.
Right.
Um, so it was a little bit different. I met my mentor because I was dealing with a problem with my Shih Tzu dog, and I went into a pet store in a little town in the Niagara region, and they gave me this gentleman's phone number. So I called him up, and it was a totally different environment than what I was used to on the sport field. Um, Completely different. It was all when he taught me when it came to problem solving. If you're going to focus on something, you focus on that. You make a plan and you work that plan. I remember traveling to him from where I'm located now, and round trip is about 4 hours. I literally worked my dog for 35 seconds and solved a problem. Um, like he just got out on the field. He had one bite, was successful, painted that picture, imprinted it, and done. He really taught me it's not about how much training you do, it's about how correct the training is. Going over and over and over and over to the sport field or to a trainer or doing the same things over and over again and getting the same result is what, right? It's insanity. So
So they say.
again, again, you do need repetitions in order to be able to train your dog and do the right things with your dog and show them different pictures and show them the same picture and let them be successful when you're building foundation for sure. Um, when you're doing things new and you're changing it up, sometimes you only have to do it once and you can move on if you have the right dog. Um, his I remember being out on the sport field and or out on the field, and I was doing a foosh with my Shih dog, and I got back out to the vehicle, and his handler said to me, and Murray, he's gone now, but Murray, his handler, he said, "Don't ever fucking let me see you do that again." And I went, "What?" He goes, "That was the biggest bunch of bullshit that I just saw out there. What the fuck were you doing out there dancing around with your dog? You had no method on what you were doing. You had no direction on what you were working on. What the hell are you doing?" He says, and I'm learning from that day. You know what I mean? Like that was my first impression on being anywhere near my mentor. Was okay,
Man, people who are
these
willing
guys,
to talk to you like that
oh,
are the most valuable human beings in the world, as far as I'm
right,
concerned. If you're willing to take the message.
right. And I got the experience on developing my handler skills while developing dogs long before I was a decoy. Um, I think there's a lot of weight put on the decoy and not enough weight put on the actual handler.
Hmm.
A good handler can develop a dog uh, with a good decoy. Um, Handler skills are so important, especially in the development stage of a dog. The handler can do a lot of incorrect things, knowing when to get into the pocket, knowing when to get out, knowing when to apply pressure, when not knowing, when to just when you become a distraction, when to creep the leash, when not to creep the leash, when your dog needs you, when they don't need you. All of those things when you're developing a dog into to bite work is key. And I was taught that. I was taught how to do that and shown how to do it. Um, there's a lot of different things. We go to these bike clubs and things, and that wasn't how a bike club was ran when I first saw my first bike clubs and
How did it go
going
with
out.
you? How was it back
The,
then? That would have been
uh,
in the early 2000s that you started, right?
yeah, yeah. There was only two people on the training field.
Hmm.
There was not spectators. Okay. If you were spectating, it was from your vehicle.
Oh,
You
interesting.
it was the dog, the decoy, and the handler. That's it, right?
Hmm.
Again, a lot of these dogs were PPD dogs, were being trained for canine, and they had true social aggression. So if
Right.
they came off the bite of the decoy, they're looking for their next victim. Okay. Number one, it was for the safety of the dog. It was safety for the spectators as well. And not just that, the decoy and the handler and the dog were working on a specific requirement for a canine department, or they were working on a specific issue, or they were working on a specific task. Absolute focus was needed in order to be able to perform those tasks and to do those trainings. They wanted it absolutely clear and fair to the animal so that the dog could be successful. So making the dog successful was the goal and the task at hand, and that concentration needed to be had. Those outside distractions couldn't be there. So yeah, it was totally different than it is today.
Interesting.
You didn't walk your dog through a crowd of people sitting on lawn chairs back to your truck after a bite. Not with these dogs. They'd bite them on the
Right.
way through. They'd bite them on the way through, right? Like they again, different time, different genetics. Those dogs today aren't socially acceptable. Those dogs today, um, very few departments in North America would want dogs that were like that,
Most of the
right? That were
handlers
that
wouldn't
tough.
be able to handle them,
No,
unfortunately.
no, yeah, like that's another
That's a
conversation
whole other, yeah,
completely.
a whole other discussion. But yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
that's a big part of the reason that we did the herder litter that we did is because in conversation with the police departments, they were saying that, or specifically one of the trainers from the police departments was saying that they were having these mouths come up the leash at the handlers so often, and these relatively green police canine handlers weren't able to deal with it. And understandably, like it's your first dog,
right.
it's your first working dog, you're a police officer. You maybe didn't even know you were going to be in canine until it sounded like a good idea and you joined up, and now you've got this mal that wants to eat you half the time that it's out of its kennel. And they just don't have the experience to
Right.
be able to deal with it. So that, that's
Yeah.
definitely something to
Like
be.
for instance, at my mentor's kennel, this was the days before cell phones were popular and what have you. So I would call him from my house, and I lived about 15 minutes from his place. And I would call him before I arrived, like
Right.
when I was on my way, so that he could ensure that there was no dogs
Hmm.
when I got there, because I get bit. That's that simple, right? Like totally different dogs than they are today. Um,
I think a big
not
part of
saying,
it too comes from the social media side of things, where
mhm,
so much of this now goes on social media. And the fact of the matter is that these dogs, like hot dogs and hugs, are not going to train these dogs. The
no,
they
no,
they need to understand who's in control of that situation. And
right,
if they
like
don't know that it's you, then it won't be you. And you don't want it to not be you when you're dealing with that type of dog.
right. It's, you know, some of the things, some of the just small fundamental things that I was taught. We talked about the German Shepherds and the Golden Retriever German Shepherds and how they're so social and what have you. You know, when it's very strange today when somebody says, "Hey, can I pet your dog?" and you say, "No, no, I'm
Right.
sorry, you can't pet my dog," and they look at you like you got four heads.
Oh, like you're the biggest asshole they've ever met, and how
Right,
dare you not let me touch your dog?
right. So I like to always respond with, "Can I have the keys to your car?" Right?
I
Like,
like it.
no, no, right? Well, years ago, like when I first started into the training and the sport world and with my mentor and what have you, nobody ever asked to pet a German Shepherd. Are you crazy?
Right. You'd have to be
You know,
nuts.
right, right. Because you'd be like, you'd have to be nuts to want to pet that German Shepherd. He's going to bite you, right? That was always the first thought. Now it's not like that. It's
Right.
it's changed, right? But again, those dogs today, even for police departments or jails or even like sport and having a family dog, like they just wouldn't be socially acceptable any longer. And society has changed from
Well,
what the needs
hopefully they
what the
don't
needs are
die
for the dog.
out. Yeah, hopefully they don't
No.
die out completely, because there's enough people out there who still, you and I included, and a bunch of the people that we've, the names that have come up throughout the conversation today
Hmm.
included, are people who like that type of dog. Some of the names are of the people in the conversation are trying to produce dogs like that, of,
Hmm.
different styles, different bloodlines, and what have you. But everybody with the same idea that, look, the German Shepherd, if I had to recommend a working dog to somebody nowadays, I don't know that the German Shepherd breed, as it stands right now, like as a whole, would be the place to start. As much as I love German
No.
Shepherds, it would be a Malinois would be the way to go.
it's
And unfortunately, I think we're
it's
going to start seeing the same thing out of Malinois as they gain in popularity. Because my theory with German Shepherds is that, as much as the kennel clubs have caused them to be watered down, and the SV with changing the rules, the judging rules in IGP and what have you, uh, I think it's television that ultimately caused the downfall of the German Shepherd. I think it's the overpopularization of the breed on television that caused people to want that dog, and then the producers produced dogs to fill the desires of the market. That's my economics side coming in, but to me it was a demand side driven thing that ultimately the rest of the kennel clubs and the breed organizations came around and backfilled the need for more social dogs, because of the desires that were caused through people seeing these dogs on TV in the various TV shows, starting way back at
uh,
Rin Tin Tin.
I
But that's
can
that's one of my theories.
I can agree with that to a point. I mean, I also think that society, like through television and what have you, it does have a lot to do with it. Sport has something to do with it as well. I think there's a lot of components that actually have to do with the changing in the natural drives and the natural genetic requirements that I believe should be a German Shepherd.
I think
Um,
there's I think there's
you know,
unquestionably 100 different reasons. I
oh,
just
for
trace it
sure.
all back to being
Like
overly
I, I, I
popular.
I can give you an example. One of my pet peeves is I call a breeder up. and ask them how their puppy is, and they say, "Oh, they have great prey drive." I'm like, "So does the kitten that I just brought home
Right.
yesterday, right?" So it should have prey drive, like of course, a dog does
That's
has,
kind of the basics.
right?
It's like
So
saying
I
it's got
mean,
a nose and fur.
right, and it's like the the food drive. Like I like to blend food away very, very quickly. I like to use food for teaching, and then you start to blend it away very, very quickly, and you start to um, use praise and touch and toys and what have you in order to be able to get the dog to perform or more as a reward and all these other things,
Sure.
and then just getting your dog to work for good boy or good girl, right?
Yeah.
So I see some of these dogs that they're 2 and 3 years old and will do anything for a piece of kibble, one single piece of kibble. The food drive is so crazy
Yeah.
that it's you know to me that's a little unnatural, right? It's great to have
Interesting.
food drive for teaching, but when it comes dysfunctional, like
Hmm.
I'm talking dysfunctional food drive, then
Where they have the same drive for a piece of kibble that they would have for their ball, for instance.
correct, correct, or for a decoy.
Or for, yeah, well, I can't
Oh,
honestly say
but
I've personally ever seen that. That's not to say that I don't think it exists.
right, but so I mean that's just an example. That's a
Sure.
hypothetical, right?
Okay, sure.
I've never personally seen that either, but let's say that it's that dysfunctional, right?
That would be a
It's
problem.
it's like having ball drive that's dysfunctional.
Right.
One of the things that I was witness to years ago was um, a test for some canines for a canine department. They came up and were testing some dogs, and they would hold a Kong out or a ball out and try to distract the dog off the bite. This was when like um, balls and toys were really just more not I wouldn't say just starting, but becoming much more popular as a reward sequence for a dog. And the dogs didn't come off the bite for the ball, and they failed all the dogs. And the answer was
Really?
was yeah, they failed the dogs because they wouldn't come off the bite for the ball. And
That
because
hurts my
that's what
soul just a little bit.
right, of course. Well, now, you know, you look at them with four heads and go, well, we don't want the dogs to out off anything at
Right.
all. Like they were never taught that, right? They're taught to hang on. Again, things started to change, right? Like you could see it. Um, we talked about canine departments with the Holden bark. Um,
Right.
it's completely different now than what it was. There's also a lot more tools at a police officer's disposal now. They have the stun guns, and they have this, and they have a whole bunch of different tools where really canine dogs now 80-90% of them are single purpose search dogs, because
Sure.
that's one task that we can't perform, or science can't duplicate, is a
Right.
dog's nose. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, look, before we wrap, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you wanted to get out to everybody?
No, I mean, this is the first podcast I've ever done, so thank you very much, Jamie. I
I think you
greatly
crushed it.
appreciate I greatly appreciate it. And again, call out to all the folks that ever worked with Ace, and Brent and Haz and Carson and Ryan, as well as my mentor JPG, and Brittany and her dogs and her kennel when she had it. And it's a pleasure to have Ace, and it's a pleasure to get him out there to see what he can create. And yeah, I'm looking for more in the future. And I like to learn from everybody. So just to say that I only have one mentor, a lot of people that I just mentioned there contributed
Absolutely.
to, providing me with tools in my toolbox that I can utilize with the dog. So it's not just one person; it's a lot. And I just love building relationships with folks in the dog world. And I think we should all be working more together than apart.
I could not agree with you more, and I absolutely love having the opportunity to pick the brain of people who've been in this world for so much longer than I have. Someone like yourself who's, forgotten more about dog training than I will probably ever learn. So thank you for your time. I really, really appreciate it. And looking forward to good things to come with this pairing. Where can people find you? I think it's Bespoke Canine on
Yeah,
Instagram. Is that right?
Bespoke Canine on Instagram, Bespoke Canine on Facebook as well. I do have an employee. She will answer, Sue. If I don't respond myself as well, we both monitor the Instagram. It can get a little bit crazy with work and family and
Of
dogs, and
course.
we kind of share that responsibility. Yeah, I mean, anybody can reach out, say hello, ask questions about Ace. If anybody's looking for more videos and what have you, I'll try to post some more videos on mine as well as share with Jamie. Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
looking forward to a little bit more exposure too. So, and building a network because, maybe I run into that animal that I'm not 100% sure that I can assist with. And it's great to have a network of people to be able to pass those on to. I'm not the guy that'll say that I can fix every dog or that I can help every dog. I'm more than willing to say that, what, I think I might know somebody in my network that can help you. So it's
In the
all
words
about,
of Rod Petrovic of Viking Canine Canada, all of us are smarter than any one of us. And I think that that is
yeah,
absolutely something the dog world needs to take to heart.
100%, I mean, I'm more than willing to take suggestions or being able to pick up the phone to be able to ask a question to somebody. Maybe they've run into it before or just bouncing suggestions off of people and what have you. That's what we should all be about.
Well, thanks a lot, Rob. I really, really appreciate your time. It's been a really fun conversation, and let's do it again. Maybe once the puppies are on the ground, we can have a little debrief and give our thoughts on what finally came out of
For
it.
sure, for sure. I'm hoping that I can make it up your way. I'd like to check out your dogs and maybe throw a suit on.
I'd love
And
to see you. We've
all
got
right,
an
man.
apartment up here. You're welcome anytime.
Sounds great, man.
It's great to talk to you, man.